The insurance claims kept piling up on my desk, each one a small tragedy reduced to paperwork and policy numbers. Water damage in Buckhead. Fire loss in Decatur. Life insurance payout in Marietta. That one made me pause. The deceased was only 52, same age as my father had been. Another heart attack. Another family left to sort through grief and legal documents. Another reminder that life came with no guarantees except the final one. My name is Matthew Cooper. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior claims adjuster for Southeastern Mutual in Atlanta. It's the kind of job that sounds boring at dinner parties but becomes unexpectedly profound when you realize you're dealing with people at their worst moments, trying to rebuild lives from whatever remains. I'd fallen into it after college, thinking it would be temporary, something to pay bills while I figured out my real calling. 12 years later, I was still figuring, still adjusting claims, still coming home to an empty apartment that felt more like a waste station than a life. The Marietta claim stared back at me from the screen. Thomas Morrison, survived by wife Patricia and mother Evelyn. Standard payout, no complications, just another family learning that money doesn't fill the holes people leave behind. I processed it quickly, efficiently, the way I'd learned to handle death, at arm's length, with professional sympathy that never quite touched the scar tissue around my own losses. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Rachel. Don't forget, tomorrow, 2 p.m., Oak Grove Cemetery. As if I could forget. 1 year since Dad's funeral. 1 year since everything changed. 1 year since the words that still echoed in family gatherings nobody attended anymore. I closed the Morrison file and opened my desk drawer, pulling out the photo I kept hidden beneath insurance manuals. Dad, Grandma Rose, Rachel, and me at the lake house the last summer before everything went wrong. Dad's arm around Grandma, both of them laughing at something Rachel had said. Mom had taken the picture, though you'd never know it now. She'd erased herself from our history as efficiently as she'd erased Grandma from our lives. The drive home took me past the old neighborhood, past the house where I'd grown up. I shouldn't have taken that route, but grief has its own GPS, always recalculating toward places that hurt. The Victorian looked the same from the outside. Pristine white paint, wraparound porch, garden that Grandma had tended for 40 years. But the soul was gone, evident in the professional landscaping that had replaced Grandma's wildflower chaos. The security system signs that warned away memories along with intruders. I'd driven past it exactly once in the past year, 3 months after the funeral, hoping to see some sign of Grandma. Instead, I'd seen contractors carrying out her things, decades of accumulation reduced to donation runs and dumpster loads. Mom hadn't wasted any time erasing the evidence of the woman who'd helped build that house, who'd made it a home. My apartment felt especially hollow that night. I heated up leftover Chinese food and sat at my kitchen table, laptop open to work I couldn't focus on. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone, the digital archaeology of a family that no longer existed. There was Dad at my college graduation, proud despite the accounting degree he'd quietly discouraged. Insurance is safe, I told him, parroting the career counselor's advice. That's what worries me, he'd replied. Safe rarely leads to happy. There was Grandma teaching Rachel to make pierogies, flour dusting both their faces like snow. Mom had complained about the mess, but Grandma had just laughed. Memories are messy, Patricia. That's how you know they're real. There was the whole family at Dad's 50th birthday, 2 years before the heart attack. Mom had insisted on the country club, but Dad had wanted barbecue in the backyard. They'd compromised on catered barbecue at the country club, which satisfied no one but avoided an argument. Looking at it now, I could see the fault lines we'd all ignored. Mom and Dad on opposite sides of the table, Grandma closer to us kids than to her own son. Everyone smiling for the camera but not at each other. I closed the laptop and poured myself a bourbon, Dad's drink of choice. He'd tried to teach me to appreciate it once, explaining about mash bills and aging, the difference between bourbon and whiskey. I'd pretended to care because he cared, filed the information away with all the other things I'd learned to please others. Now I drank it because it reminded me of him, burned the right way going down. The cemetery was crowded for a Tuesday afternoon, full of the living trying to make sense of the dead. Rachel was already there when I arrived, standing by Dad's headstone with a bouquet of grocery store flowers. She looked older than her 32 years, divorce and single motherhood adding lines that shouldn't have been there yet. "You made it," she said, not quite an accusation. "Said I would." Yeah, well, saying and doing haven't exactly lined up in this family. I didn't argue. She was right. We'd all said we'd stay close after Dad died, that we wouldn't let grief divide us. But grief is a selfish emotion, demanding solitary confinement, and we'd each served our sentences alone. "Mom's not coming?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "She's in Hilton Head with husband number 2. Said she'd already mourned Dad and didn't believe in wallowing." Richard Blackwood, investment banker, member of all the right clubs. Mom had married him 8 months after Dad's funeral, a timeline that suggested either remarkable resilience or advanced planning. I tried not to think too hard about which. "How's Grandma?" Rachel asked, the question we always circled back to. "I don't know. She won't return my calls." "Mine either. I drove by the assisted living place last month, but they said she wasn't taking visitors. She's probably—" I stopped, not sure how to finish. Hurt? Broken? Done with the Cooper family circus? All of the above? We stood in silence, contemplating the granite marker that reduced Dad to names and dates. Robert William Cooper, beloved husband and father. Nothing about being a son, though he'd been that longer than anything else. Nothing about the man who'd built treehouses and attended every school play, who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for college he'd never attended himself, who'd loved his mother with a fierce protectiveness that should have been enough. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Rachel said suddenly. "The day of the funeral. Not the service or the burial, but after. At the house." I knew exactly what she meant. The scene was carved into my memory like trauma tends to be, every detail preserved in high definition. We'd gone back to the house after the cemetery, ostensibly for the reception but really because no one knew what else to do. Grief makes robots of us all, following programming when conscious thought fails. The house had filled with casserole-bearing neighbors and distant relatives, everyone murmuring the same inadequate condolences. Grandma Rose had been in the kitchen, washing dishes that didn't need washing, keeping her hands busy while her heart broke. She'd lived in that house for 15 years, moving in after Grandpa died because Dad had insisted. "Family takes care of family," he'd said, and Mom had agreed because it meant built-in childcare and someone else to handle the cooking. Mom had walked into the kitchen like she was entering a boardroom, all business despite the black dress. She'd waited until the last neighbor left, until Rachel and I were in the living room sorting sympathy cards, until she thought there were no witnesses. But I'd heard the voices and moved closer, some instinct warning me to pay attention. "Rose," Mom had said, her voice carrying that false sweetness that preceded cruelty. "We need to talk about arrangements." "What arrangements?" Grandma's voice had been thick with tears but steady. "Living arrangements. This house. The situation has changed. Patricia, please. Robert's not even cold. Which is exactly why we need to address this now. This house is mine now. Robert's gone, and I need to think about my future." "Your future?" "I don't understand." But she did. We all did. Mom's meaning was as clear as the eviction notice she didn't need to serve. "You've had a good run here," Mom had continued, as if 15 years of family could be summarized like a theater review. "But it's time to be realistic. This house is too big for one person, worth too much to sit empty. I'll be selling it. Selling Patricia. This is my home. No, Rose. This is my house. Robert's name was on the deed, and now it's mine. I've already looked into some nice assisted living facilities. Very comfortable. More appropriate for someone your age. I'm 75, not dead. Exactly. Which is why you need to be somewhere with proper care. Not rattling around a house you can't maintain. I'd moved then, stepping into the kitchen before I'd fully decided to. Mom, what are you doing? She turned to me with that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. Matthew, I'm just discussing the future with your grandmother. Nothing for you to worry about. It sounds like you're kicking her out. Don't be dramatic. I'm being practical. Someone has to be. Grandma had stood at the sink, shoulders straight despite everything. When? I'm sorry, Mom had asked. When do you want me gone? Oh, Rose, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Let's say, end of the week? That gives you time to pack, make arrangements. I'll even pay for the movers. 5 days. 5 days after burying her son, my grandmother was being evicted from her home by the woman who'd smiled through wedding vows about family. This is cruel, I'd said. Dad would never. Your father is dead, Mom had snapped, the mask finally slipping. And he left me to clean up his messes as usual. Do you have any idea how much debt he had? How much this house costs to maintain? How much money we've spent supporting her? She gestured at Grandma like she was indicating a costly appliance. She's family, Rachel had said from the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. She's a burden, Mom had corrected. Has been for years. Eating our food, using our utilities, contributing nothing. Well, I'm done. I've been patient. I've been kind. But I'm not sacrificing my future for a useless old woman who should have planned better. The words had hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Useless old woman. As if Grandma hadn't raised Dad alone after Grandpa died young. As if she hadn't helped raise Rachel and me while Mom pursued her career. As if she hadn't turned that house into a home with her cooking and stories and unconditional love. Get out, Grandma had said quietly. Excuse me? Mom's voice had sharpened. Get out of my kitchen. You've said your piece. I'll be gone by Friday. Mom, no, I'd protested. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She'd finally turned from the sink, and her eyes were dry. Your mother's made her position clear. This house is hers now. I'm just a tenant who's overstayed her welcome. Grandma! It's all right, Matthew. I've buried my son today. Everything else is just details. She'd walked past us all, dignity intact despite everything, and climbed the stairs to her room. The room she'd decorated with photos of Dad as a baby, of Grandpa in his army uniform, of Rachel and me at every age. The room she'd have to strip bare by week's end. Was that necessary? Rachel had demanded. Mom had smoothed her dress, composure restored. Yes, it was. You'll understand when you're older, when you have to make hard decisions. Sometimes kindness is cutting clean rather than letting things fester. Kindness? I'd laughed bitterly. You just made a 75-year-old woman homeless at her son's funeral. I offered assisted living. That's hardly homeless. You offered to warehouse her somewhere she can die out of sight. Matthew Cooper, you watch your tone. This is my house. Dad's house, I'd corrected. Dad's house that Grandma helped make a home. That she maintained while you worked 60-hour weeks. That she filled with love while you filled it with acquisitions. Mom's face had flushed. How dare you? How dare you? Rachel had interrupted. How dare you stand in the kitchen where Grandma cooked thousands of meals for this family and call her useless? How dare you calculate her worth like she's a line item on a spreadsheet? Get out, Mom had said coldly. Both of you, come back when you're ready to be rational. We'd left, but not before I'd gone to Grandma's room. She'd been sitting on her bed, looking at a photo album. I'm going to fix this, I'd promised. No, sweet boy, you're going to let me handle my own life. I've been doing it longer than you've been alive. Where will you go? I'll figure it out. I always do. But her voice had been tired, and for the first time in my life, my grandmother had looked old. Now, standing at Dad's grave a year later, the memory felt fresh as yesterday's wound. She never even cried, Rachel said. Mom, not at the funeral, not at the house, not when Grandma left. Like none of it mattered. Maybe it didn't. To her. How did we not see it? What she was. I thought about all the signs we'd ignored or excused. The way Mom had always referred to Grandma as Robert's mother, rather than by name. The separate Thanksgiving dinners when Mom would invite her colleagues instead of family. The eye rolls when Grandma told stories about the old country. The tight smiles when people complimented Grandma's cooking instead of Mom's catering. We saw what we wanted to see, I said. What Dad helped us see. He was the bridge, and when he died, the bridge burned. We stood there a while longer, adding our silence to the symphony of grief that filled the cemetery. Other families came and went, performing their own rituals of remembrance. But we remained, held in place by unfinished business. I hired a private investigator, Rachel said suddenly. What? To find Grandma. Mom won't say where she went, and the assisted living places have privacy laws. But I know she's somewhere in the city. She wouldn't leave Atlanta, not with Dad buried here. Rachel. She's our grandmother, Matt. The only real family we have left. I'm not giving up on her. What if she doesn't want to be found? What if we're just reminding her of everything she lost? Then at least we'll have tried. That's more than Mom did. My phone rang before I could respond. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Mr. Cooper? This is James Hartley from Hartley, Bradshaw and Associates. Lawyers. My stomach clenched. Yes. I'm calling regarding your grandmother, Rose Cooper. I understand you've been trying to reach her. Is she all right? Is she? She's fine, Mr. Cooper. More than fine, actually. But she's asked me to contact you and your sister about a matter of some urgency. Could you both come to my office tomorrow? Say, 10 o'clock. I looked at Rachel, who was watching me with worried eyes. Can you tell me what this is about? I think it's best discussed in person. But Mr. Cooper, your grandmother wanted me to tell you she's been thinking of you. Both of you. And that everything is about to make sense. He gave me the address, a downtown high-rise that housed the kind of law firms that billed more per hour than I made in a day. After he hung up, I stared at the phone like it might provide answers. What was that about? Rachel asked. Grandma. She wants to see us. Or her lawyer does. Tomorrow morning. Her lawyer? Since when does Grandma have a lawyer? Since when indeed? The grandmother I knew clipped coupons and mended clothes rather than throwing them away. She didn't have lawyers on retainer. She didn't have mysterious urgent matters. She had pierogies recipes and stories about the old country and a laugh that could fill a room. Except now she also had something else. Something that required professional legal representation and urgency and promises that everything would make sense. We'll go, Rachel said, not a question. Of course we'll go. We left the cemetery as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of grief and hope. Tomorrow we'd have answers. Tomorrow we'd see Grandma. Tomorrow something would change. But tonight, I went home to my empty apartment and pulled out the photo album I'd inherited from Dad's things. Pictures of him as a child, held by Grandma with a fierceness that suggested she knew even then that life would try to take him from her. Pictures of their life before Mom, when it was just the two of them against the world. Pictures of the house before it became a battlefield, when it was just home. I found what I was looking for near the back. A faded photograph of Grandma and Grandpa on their wedding day. They stood in front of a small church, both impossibly young, both radiating joy despite the modest clothes and simple setting. On the back, in Grandma's careful script, "The beginning of everything. June 15, 1967. The beginning of everything. A love story that produced my father, that survived early widowhood, that built a life worth living even when life seemed determined to tear it down. A story I'd thought had ended when Mom kicked Grandma out of the house that had become her world. But maybe stories didn't end. Maybe they just paused, gathering strength for the next chapter. I fell asleep holding the album, dreaming of tomorrow's revelations, of Grandma's voice after a year of silence, of answers to questions I didn't know how to ask. The law offices of Hartley, Bradshaw, and Associates occupied the 32nd floor of one of Atlanta's gleaming towers. Rachel and I arrived 15 minutes early, both dressed like we were attending another funeral. Some occasions demanded formal wear, and meeting your grandmother's mystery lawyer felt like one of them. The receptionist smiled professionally and led us to a conference room that probably cost more to decorate than my annual salary. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that made me dizzy. All that life reduced to matchbox cars and ant people far below. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Just answers," Rachel muttered. We waited in nervous silence, both checking our phones compulsively as if Grandma might text an explanation. The door opened exactly at 10, and James Hartley entered, silver-haired, immaculately suited, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who billed by the minute and was worth every penny. "Mr. Cooper, Ms. Stewart, thank you for coming." He set a leather portfolio on the table. "Before we begin, I need to verify your identities." We produced driver's licenses, which he examined carefully before nodding. "Excellent. Now, I'm sure you have questions." "Where's our grandmother?" Rachel interrupted. "Your call said this was about her." "Indeed it is. Mrs. Cooper will be joining us shortly. She asked me to provide some context first, to help you understand what's about to happen." "What's about to happen?" I echoed. Hartley opened his portfolio and withdrew a manila envelope, thick with documents. "Mr. Cooper, Ms. Stewart, what do you know about your grandparents' history? Specifically, their business ventures." "Business ventures?" Rachel looked as confused as I felt. "Grandpa worked at the Ford plant until he died. Grandma was a homemaker." "Ah," Hartley smiled slightly. "That's what they wanted people to believe. The truth is somewhat more complex." He pulled out a black and white photograph, Grandma and Grandpa standing in front of a small storefront. "Cooper's Kitchen, 1971. Your grandparents' first restaurant." "Restaurant?" I leaned forward. "They owned a restaurant?" "3 eventually, along with a catering business and a commercial bakery. Your grandmother built quite an empire before your grandfather's death in 1985. But that's impossible. Grandma never mentioned, because she sold everything when your grandfather died. Or rather, appeared to sell everything." Hartley withdrew more documents. "In reality, she converted the businesses into a series of investments and trusts, managed by my firm for the past 37 years. Rachel grabbed the papers, scanning them with growing amazement. "These numbers, this can't be right." "I assure you they're quite accurate. Your grandmother is what we call quietly wealthy. She's lived modestly by choice, not necessity." "Then why?" I asked, mind reeling. "Why let Mom treat her like a charity case? Why accept being kicked out of her own? I stopped, pieces clicking together. Wait, her own house. Hartley's smile widened. You're beginning to understand. Tell me, Mr. Cooper, who actually owned the house your father lived in? Dad. His name was on the deed. His name, yes, but who paid for it? The truth hit like a physical blow. Grandma. Correct. She purchased the house in 1995, put your father's name on the deed as a gift. She wanted him to have stability, to build equity, to feel successful. But she kept certain documentation. What kind of documentation? Rachel asked. The kind that proves the house was a gift with conditions. Specifically, that Rose Cooper would have lifetime residency rights, and that the house could not be sold or transferred without her written consent. Mom doesn't know, I breathed. No, she doesn't. Your father never told her, likely to avoid conflict. And your grandmother chose not to reveal it when she was evicted. She wanted to see what Patricia would do when she thought she had all the power. A test. A revelation. Your grandmother has spent the past year documenting everything. The illegal eviction, the attempted sale of the house, the elder abuse. She's also been investigating your mother's other activities. Other activities? Rachel and I exchanged glances. Were you aware that your mother had been systematically transferring your father's assets before his death? That she had him sign documents while he was heavily medicated in the hospital? That several valuable items belonging to your grandmother mysteriously disappeared from the house after she left? Each accusation landed like a punch. We'd known Mom was cold, calculating, but this suggested something darker. She stole from Grandma? Rachel's voice was small. Jewelry, mostly. Family heirlooms that Patricia assumed were costume pieces. They weren't. Hartley produced photographs. This ruby necklace? Purchased by your great-grandfather in 1945. Valued at approximately $60,000. These emerald earrings? Your great-grandmother's, worth even more. All pawned by your mother within weeks of Rose's departure. We'll pay her back, I said immediately. Whatever Mom took, that won't be necessary. The conference room door opened, and there she was. Grandma Rose, but not as I'd ever seen her. Gone was the house dress and apron uniform I'd known all my life. She wore an elegant suit, her silver hair styled professionally rather than in her usual bun. She looked like what she apparently was, a successful businesswoman who'd been playing a very long game. "Hello, my loves," she said, and her voice was exactly the same. Warm, loving, with just a hint of the Polish accent she'd never quite lost. Rachel flew out of her chair, nearly knocking Grandma over with her hug. I followed, and for a moment we just held each other. A year of separation dissolving in tears and apologies and questions all tumbling together. "Shoo," Grandma soothed. "It's all right. I'm here. We're together. The rest is just details." Details? I pulled back to look at her. "Grandma, you let us think you were homeless, destitute. We've been worried sick. I know, sweet boy, and I'm sorry for that. But I needed to know who would stand by me when they thought I had nothing. Who valued me for me, not for what I could provide." "We failed," Rachel said miserably. "We let Mom drive you away. We didn't fight hard enough. You were grieving your father, and you did fight. I heard every word that day in the kitchen. But some battles aren't meant to be won in the moment. Some require patience, strategy, the long view." She settled into a chair, still every inch the grandmother who'd raised us despite the power suit. "James, continue please. They need to know everything." Hartley cleared his throat. "The short version is this. Patricia Cooper is about to have a very bad week. The house she's been trying to sell? She can't, your grandmother owns it. The money from your father's life insurance that she's been spending? There are questions about whether those documents were legally signed. The items she stole? We have proof of theft, and their value makes it a felony. But more importantly, Grandma added, she's about to learn what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours. You're going to evict her? Rachel asked. Oh no, dear. I'm going to give her exactly what she gave me. 5 days' notice to vacate my house. The letter will be delivered today at exactly 2:47 p.m. 2:47? I asked. The same time she told me to leave 1 year ago. I'm nothing if not precise. But Grandma, I said carefully, she's remarried. Richard Blackwood. Ah yes, Richard. Grandma's smile turned sharp. Did you know Patricia was seeing him before your father died? That she'd been planning her next move while your father was still fighting for his life? The room went silent. Even Hartley looked uncomfortable. How do you know that? Rachel whispered. Because I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I saw the texts on her phone. The secret meetings. The plans they made for after. Grandma's voice hardened. Your mother didn't just abandon me, children. She abandoned your father long before his heart did. Does Richard know? About the house, the theft, any of it? He's about to, along with his partners at the investment firm who take a dim view of scandal. It's amazing how much people will distance themselves when legal troubles arise. I sank into my chair, overwhelmed. This is vindictive. Yes, Grandma agreed simply. It is. Does that disappoint you? I thought about it, really thought about it. About the woman who'd raised my father alone, who'd built businesses from nothing, who'd loved us unconditionally, who'd been thrown out like garbage by someone who'd smiled at family dinners and called her Mom to her face. No, I said finally. It doesn't. Good. Because I'm not done. She turned to Hartley. Tell them about the rest. The rest. Rachel looked between them. There's more. Your grandmother has established a foundation in your father's name. It will provide housing assistance for elderly people facing eviction. The initial funding is $10 million. $10 million? I couldn't finish. The businesses did very well, Grandma said modestly. Compound interest is a wonderful thing when you have 37 years to let it work. But there's a condition, Hartley continued. The foundation needs directors. People who understand what it's like to watch family become strangers, who know the value of a true home. Your grandmother would like you both to run it. Us? Rachel shook her head. We don't know anything about running a foundation. You know about loss, Grandma corrected. About the fear of having nowhere to go. About the difference between a house and a home. That's all the expertise you need. The rest you can learn. What about you? I asked. Where will you live? In my house, of course, after Patricia vacates. Though I think I'll redecorate, too much beige for my taste now. And I'll need help. The garden's gone to hell under her care. We'll help, Rachel said immediately. We'll move in if you want. Both of us. Slow down, dear. You have your own life, your own home. But Sunday dinners? Those we can manage. Like we used to. Before. Before Mom ruined everything. I finished. Before we let her. There's a difference. We all made choices, some better than others. But the past is past. What matters is what we do now. A knock on the door interrupted us. Hartley's assistant entered, holding a phone. Mr. Hartley? Mrs. Blackwood's attorney is on line 1. He seems agitated. Grandma checked her watch. 2:52. 5 minutes for the shock to wear off. Right on schedule. She stood, smoothing her skirt. James, handle that, would you? Children, come. Let me show you something. She led us to another office, smaller but warmly decorated. The walls were covered with photos I'd never seen. Grandma and Grandpa at their restaurants, newspaper clippings about their business success, images of a life hidden from us. Why keep it secret? I asked. All of this, why not tell us? Because your grandfather and I came from nothing. We knew what money could do to families, how it could twist love into greed. We wanted your father to make his own way, to value work and family over wealth. And he did. He became a good man who married. She paused, choosing her words. Someone who valued the wrong things. You never liked her, Rachel said. It wasn't a question. I tried. For your father's sake, for yours, I tried. But Patricia saw me as competition from the start. Another woman in her territory, someone who knew her husband's secrets, who'd loved him longer. She tolerated me when it was convenient, when I was useful. The moment I wasn't, she showed her true colors. I finished. The trash took itself out, Grandma said with satisfaction. Now we rebuild. The house, the family, the connections we let wither. But this time we do it right. No secrets. No suffering in silence. No letting toxic people poison our well. What about Mom? Rachel asked. After she's evicted, after the legal troubles. What then? That's up to her. She can fight it and lose more. She can accept it and start over. She can reach out and apologize, though I doubt her pride will allow it. Whatever she chooses, it won't be our problem anymore. It's that simple? No, dear. It's that necessary. You can't save people who don't want saving. You can't force someone to value what they're determined to discount. All you can do is protect yourself and the people who matter. Hartley appeared in the doorway, looking amused. Patricia's lawyer is threatening to sue for intentional infliction of emotional distress. On what grounds? Grandma asked. Apparently, being served eviction papers on the anniversary of your son's funeral is calculatedly cruel. Interesting. And being evicted 5 days after burying your son? What's that called? A learning opportunity, Hartley said dryly. Shall I respond? Tell him we'll see them in court. All of it will come out, the affair, the theft, the elder abuse. Make sure he understands that. With pleasure. After he left, we sat in comfortable silence, processing the reversal of fortune that had just upended our understanding of everything. There's one more thing, Grandma said eventually. She pulled out a small wrapped package and handed it to me. From your father. He gave it to me the week before he died. Asked me to save it for the right moment. I unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather journal. Inside the front cover, Dad's handwriting. For Matthew. Fill this with the life you choose, not the one chosen for you. Love, Dad. He knew. I asked, throat tight. About his heart? Yes. About Patricia? Some. Enough to want you both protected. There are letters for each of you in my house, hidden where Patricia never thought to look. He loved you so much. Never doubt that. We won't, Rachel promised. Not anymore. We talked for another hour, planning the foundation, discussing the house, imagining a future that suddenly seemed possible again. When we finally left, the city looked different from the 32nd floor, not smaller but more manageable. A place where people could lose everything and still rebuild, where family could mean choice rather than obligation, where grandmothers could be secret millionaires dispensing justice in sensible shoes. Want to drive by the house? Rachel asked as we waited for the elevator. Our house, I corrected. Grandma's house. Yes. We drove in companionable silence, both processing the morning's revelations. The Victorian looked exactly the same from the outside, but knowing it had always been Grandma's changed everything. This wasn't the site of our family's destruction. It was proof of Grandma's foresight, her quiet protection, Her refusal to let Patricia's cruelty be the end of the story. A moving truck sat in the driveway. Through the windows, we could see boxes being packed, furniture being wrapped. Patricia herself appeared on the porch, designer suit wrinkled, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly as she talked. "Should we stop?" Rachel asked. "No. Let her have this moment of karma in private." "Is it wrong that I don't feel sorry for her?" "Feel sorry for the person she could have been," I said. "The mother who could have chosen love over money, family over status. That person deserves pity. This one, she's just facing consequences." We drove on, leaving Patricia to her packing and her panic. There would be time for confrontations later if needed. Time for her to rage about unfairness while missing the irony. Time for Richard to discover he'd married someone capable of stealing from the elderly. Time for truth to work its way through the lies like water through cracks. But today was for Grandma, for Rachel and me, for the family we were going to rebuild from the ashes of the one that had burned. That evening, I sat in my apartment with Dad's journal open before me. The first page waited, blank and full of possibility. I thought about what to write, how to begin this new chapter. Finally, I picked up the pen. Today I learned that inheritance isn't always about money, and wealth isn't always visible. That sometimes the best revenge is patient justice. That grandmothers can be warriors in cardigans, and that love, real love, plays the long game. Today, 1 year after we thought we'd lost everything, we discovered we'd only lost what wasn't worth keeping. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. But tonight, I'm calling Grandma to tell her I love her. Some things shouldn't wait for the right moment. Some things are the right moment. I closed the journal and picked up my phone. Grandma answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Hello, sweet boy," she said, and I could hear her smile. "Hi, Grandma. I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for waiting, for fighting, for showing us what family really means." "Family means showing up," she said simply. "Even when it takes a year, even when it requires lawyers, even when you have to burn down what was to build what should be." "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Matthew. Now get some rest. Tomorrow we have a foundation to build and a garden to restore. The roses are going to be beautiful this year. I can feel it." She was right, of course. Grandma usually was. The roses would be beautiful. The foundation would help people. The house would be a home again. And the family, the real family, the chosen family, the family that valued love over money, would thrive. All it had taken was patience, truth, and a grandmother who refused to be thrown away. All it had taken was exactly what we'd had all along, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to bloom. Like roses after a hard winter, like justice after a long wait, like family after the false ones fall away. Beautiful, thorny, and absolutely worth the wait. The news of Patricia's eviction spread through Atlanta's social circles like wildfire through drought-dry grass. Within days, the phone calls started. Relatives who'd been silent for a year suddenly remembering our existence. Friends of Mom's fishing for gossip. Dad's former colleagues expressing shock and subtle satisfaction. "Did you know Helen Blackwood called me?" Rachel said over coffee at Grandma's kitchen table, our kitchen table now. "Richard's first wife. She wanted to warn me about him. Said Patricia wasn't his first affair with a married woman." "Shocking," I said dryly. "A man who helps married women plan their futures, while their husbands are dying, might have questionable morals." Grandma set down plates of pierogi, the smell immediately transporting me back to childhood Sundays. "Let them talk. The truth needed air. Now it has it." "Where is Mom staying?" Rachel asked. "The Marriott downtown, according to my sources." Grandma's sources turned out to be an impressive network of friends from her business days. Women who'd built their own quiet empires and looked after each other. Richard's keeping his distance. Bad for business, being associated with elder abuse and theft. Has she tried to contact you? Through lawyers only. She's contesting everything, of course. Claims I manipulated your father, that the house papers were forged, that I'm senile. She smiled. Hard to prove senility when you've been successfully managing a multi-million-dollar portfolio for 37 years. What about the criminal charges? I asked. For the jewelry? The district attorney is reviewing the case. The value makes it grand larceny, and crossing state lines to pawn them adds federal charges. Patricia might want to focus less on fighting the eviction and more on finding a good criminal defense attorney. It was strange hearing Grandma discuss legal strategy like a general planning a campaign. This hidden side of her, sharp, strategic, unflinching, was taking some adjustment. You're different, Rachel observed. Not bad different, just more yourself, somehow. I spent 15 years being what your father needed. A loving mother who didn't overshadow his wife. Then I spent a year being what Patricia expected. A weak-old woman who'd disappear quietly. Now I get to be who I actually am. Which is a Polish immigrant who built a restaurant empire from nothing. A widow who protected her son's legacy even when he couldn't see the threats. A grandmother who loves you enough to burn down what's rotten so something healthy can grow. The foundation paperwork arrived that afternoon. Robert Cooper House. Dad would have hated the name, would have insisted on something less conspicuous, but that was exactly why it was perfect. He'd spent his life making himself smaller to avoid conflict with Mom. His memorial would be different. First order of business, I said, reviewing the bylaws Hartley had drafted. Identifying seniors at risk of eviction. Hartley's team found 17 cases in Fulton County alone last month. 17. Rachel looked sick. 17 grandmothers thrown out by family? Or grandfathers? Or couples? Elder abuse doesn't discriminate. Grandma's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white around her teacup. Each one thinking they're alone, that they did something wrong to deserve it, that family treating them like disposable goods is somehow their fault. We'll help them, Rachel said fiercely. All of them. As many as we can. But we do it right. Not just emergency housing but legal aid, counseling, reconnection services for family members who want to repair relationships. Sometimes people need help finding their way back to each other. And sometimes, I added, thinking of Mom, they need help accepting that some bridges are meant to stay burned. We worked through dinner, planning, dreaming, building something meaningful from the ashes of our family's collapse. It felt appropriate, sitting in the kitchen where Grandma had been told to leave, creating a legacy that would prevent others from experiencing that same devastation. My phone rang as we were clearing dishes. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Matthew? The voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it, stripped of its usual command. It's your mother. Rachel and Grandma both froze. I put the phone on speaker without asking. No more secrets in this family. Patricia, I said, not granting her the title she'd forfeited. I need help. Richard's locked me out of our accounts. The hotel wants payment, and my cards are all declined. I don't have anywhere to go. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. I waited, saying nothing. I know you hate me, she continued. I know I handled things poorly, but I'm your mother. Doesn't that count for something? You're right, I said. You are my mother, which is why I'm going to give you exactly the help you gave Grandma. There's a lovely assisted living facility on Ponce de Leon. Very comfortable. More appropriate for someone your age. Matthew, please. 5 days, Mom. You have 5 days to make arrangements. After that, you're on your own. just like Grandma was. You don't understand. I have nothing. Richard took everything. The accounts, the car, even my jewelry. The jewelry you stole from Grandma? That jewelry? Silence. Or did you mean the jewelry Richard gave you? Paid for with money he'll need for his own lawyer once his involvement in Dad's premature death comes to light. What are you talking about? But her voice wavered, telling us everything. Did you really think Grandma spent a year just crying? Rachel interjected. She investigated everything. Every text between you and Richard planning your future while Dad was dying. Every document you had Dad sign while he was drugged. Every penny you stole. It's all documented. I didn't. February 15th, Grandma said quietly. 2 days before Robert's heart attack. You increased his life insurance policy. Changed the beneficiary to yourself alone, removing the children. Interesting timing. That's not. February 20th. While Robert was in intensive care, you met Richard at the Four Seasons. You stayed 3 hours. The hotel has records. How dare you? February 25th. You had Robert sign a power of attorney while he was on morphine. The nurse noticed but assumed it was routine. It wasn't. Each date fell like a hammer blow. Mom's breathing grew ragged on the other end of the line. You planned it all, I said, understanding fully hitting. Dad's death was just convenient timing for plans already in motion. I loved your father. The protest was automatic but hollow. You loved his assets, Grandma corrected. His stability. His willingness to let you be yourself while demanding he shrink to accommodate you. But love? No. Love stays by the hospital bed. Love doesn't shop for replacement husbands while planning funerals. I want a lawyer, Mom said, falling back on her default setting. Good idea, I agreed. You'll need one. Criminal charges were filed this morning. Turns out the DA takes elder abuse seriously. Who knew? The line went dead. Patricia Cooper Blackwood had hung up on her children for the last time. You all right? Grandma asked gently. Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. Or not live with them in our case, Rachel added. God, how did Dad stand it? Living with someone who was calculating his worth like a stock portfolio. He loved who he thought she was, Grandma said sadly, or who he hoped she'd become. Love makes us stupid sometimes, especially when we're young. By the time he saw clearly, you two existed, and he'd never leave you. He stayed for us? He stayed because he loved you more than he loved himself. Right or wrong, he thought an intact family was better than a broken one. He didn't realize some things are broken even when they look whole. We migrated to the living room, Grandma's living room again, though she'd already begun removing Mom's sterile touches. The throw pillows were gone, replaced by the Afghan Grandma had crocheted years ago. Family photos were returning to the mantel, including ones of Dad that Mom had boxed up within days of his death. Tell us about the restaurants, Rachel requested. The real story, not the version we got growing up. Grandma settled into her chair, the same one Mom had tried to donate to Goodwill, and smiled. Your grandfather and I came here with nothing. Literally nothing but the clothes we wore and a notebook of recipes from the old country. Everyone said we were crazy, that Americans wouldn't eat Polish food, that immigrants shouldn't aim so high. But you did it anyway. We were too young to know better. Rented a space so small you could touch both walls with outstretched arms. 12 tables, 1 stove, and determination born from having no backup plan. She told us about 16-hour days, about learning English from customers, about Grandpa charming the front while she commanded the kitchen, about their first review in the Journal-Constitution, authentic Polish cuisine worth the drive, and how they'd framed it like a diploma. Within 5 years, we had 3 locations. The catering business started because someone asked if we could do their wedding. We said yes before figuring out how. That's the secret, really, saying yes to opportunities before you're ready, then becoming ready through necessity. Why sell it all when Grandpa died? I asked. Because it was ours. Our dream, our partnership, our dance. Without him, it was just work. And I had a son to raise, grandchildren coming. I wanted to be grandma, not CEO. So I sold to employees who'd helped build it, took the money and invested quietly, lived the life that made sense for who I was becoming. But you kept the business skills, Rachel observed. Skills don't disappear. They just wait for when you need them again. Like this past year, every negotiation tactic, every strategic planning session, every lesson about patience and timing came back when I needed them most. To take down Mom, I said, to protect what mattered. Taking down your mother was just a necessary step, not the goal. The goal was this, us, together, building something better from what remained. We talked until midnight, filling in gaps, sharing memories, reimagining our family history with this new knowledge. Dad emerged differently in this telling. Not the weak man who'd tolerated his wife's coldness, but the devoted son who'd tried to bridge 2 worlds. The loving father who'd sacrificed his own happiness for our stability. He'd be proud, Grandma said as we prepared to leave, of who you've become despite everything, of how you've chosen each other when it mattered. He'd be proud of you too, I said, for fighting back, for refusing to disappear quietly. I'm not done fighting, she warned. This house needs work. The foundation needs building. Your mother's legal troubles need managing to protect you too from splash damage. And those 17 seniors facing eviction need help yesterday. We'll be here, Rachel promised. Every step. I know you will. That's the difference between real family and the performance of it. Real family shows up. I drove home through quiet streets, past the Marriott where Mom was learning what abandonment felt like, past the cemetery where Dad rested unaware of the revolution his death had sparked, past the law offices where justice was being methodically constructed. A year ago, I'd thought we'd lost everything. Our father, our family, our foundations. I'd been right about the first 2 but wrong about the third. Our foundation had been there all along, hidden beneath pretense and politeness, waiting for someone strong enough to expose it. That someone turned out to be a 76-year-old Polish immigrant in sensible shoes who'd loved us enough to play the long game. Tomorrow, the Robert Cooper House would officially incorporate. 17 seniors would get notices that help was available. Mom would get a visit from federal investigators. And Grandma would make pierogi in her own kitchen while planning the next phase of her campaign for justice. But tonight, I opened Dad's journal again and wrote, Lesson learned. Sometimes the meek don't inherit the earth. Sometimes they buy it quietly, wait for the right moment, and then reclaim it with interest. Sometimes grandmothers are secret warriors. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what's worth keeping. Sometimes the family that throws you away is doing you a favor, clearing space for the family you choose. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that family includes a grandmother who loves you enough to burn down what's broken so you can rebuild it right. Thanks, Dad, for giving us Grandma. Thanks, Grandma, for giving us truth. The rest we'll figure out together. I closed the journal and prepared for tomorrow. There was work to do, justice to serve, family to rebuild. But for the first time in a year, it felt possible. More than possible, it felt inevitable. Because Rose Cooper had spent 76 years learning how to build things that last. And we were her greatest construction project. A family founded not on blood or obligation or the accident of birth, but on choice, respect, and the revolutionary idea that love shouldn't cost more than you can afford to pay. Patricia had been right about one thing. Grandma had contributed nothing to the household finances. She'd only contributed everything that actually mattered. And now, finally, she was getting the return on that investment. With interest, compound interest, accumulated over years of patience and planning. Exactly the way a successful businesswoman would expect. Exactly the way a loving grandmother would deserve. Exactly the way our story needed to end. Not with abandonment or loss, but with coming home to what had been ours all along. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're like me, someone who spent years trying to earn love that was never truly offered, you know these aren't just stories. They're mirrors of our deepest wounds and greatest triumphs. Subscribe if these stories resonate with your journey. Hit that notification bell. Think of it as our regular meetup, where we share truths that others might not understand. And please, leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? What would you have done in my shoes? Your words matter to me, and they matter to everyone here who's walked this lonely path. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another story. Until then, remember, family isn't always blood, and sometimes the greatest gift is discovering who you truly are. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.